Welcome on a Tuesday. Coming up, it is our live and interactive ACSA Vice Presidential Candidate Forum. Coming up, we'll introduce you to our two candidates, ask them a series of questions, talk about their vision for ACSA over the next several years. Plus, we'll give you an opportunity to ask our candidates as well. Our ACSA Vice Presidential Candidate Forum starts now. And it is just after 10 a.m. We welcome you on a Tuesday to our ACSA Vice Presidential Candidate Forum. I'm Naj Alikhan, ACSA Senior Director of Marketing and Communications. Again, we are honored to have you with us today. This is a live and interactive event, so we encourage you to drop in your questions onto our chat, our comments section, and we'll tackle some of those coming up a little bit later on in this broadcast. I want to tell you a little bit about this broadcast. We have two great candidates for the ACSA Vice President position. This is an elected board position, one that will go onto our executive committee. We are going to give our candidates 4 questions. They'll have 2 minutes to respond, and we will alternate between our two candidates as to who gets to answer the question first. At the end, we'll also give the candidates a few moments to give their closing statements. And if you have questions, we'll go ahead and put those in between our regular questions and our closing statement. So again, if you have questions, go ahead and put those into the chat. A little bit about this position. The vice president position has a direct line to become the president here at ACSA. And let me map this out for you. The winner of this race coming up in May for vice president will serve in that position for 1 year. Then they will move into the position of president-elect for 1 year and then become the 56th president for the Association of California School Administrators. So let me introduce you to our two great candidates. Julie Vitale is the superintendent from Oceanside Unified School District, that is ACSA Region 18, and Daryl Camp, superintendent, San Lorenzo Unified School District, ACSA Region 6. Julie and Daryl, it is an honor to have both of you here, and thank you for your commitment to ACSA and for joining us here on this candidate forum and for the your candidacy for vice president here at ACSA. Again, both of our candidates will have the opportunity to respond to these questions. Julie, we're going to start with you. What do you see are the key issues in service of students, and how do you think ACSA can be involved in supporting the students?
Thank you, Naj, for the question and for hosting this forum. And Daryl, let's you and I have a good time with this, and I know we'll both have great responses. So there are 4 key issues that I really see ACSA needing to be responsible with addressing. Mental health is the first and foremost that comes to my mind. We know that our students are struggling more than ever, and there are a lot of dollars that are rolling towards supporting mental health in our schools, and ACSA advocacy needs to keep that work going. Along with that is the concerns around social media, which have a direct relationship to the mental health crisis that we're experiencing in our schools. Right now, there's a class action lawsuit that's nationwide that's focused on Facebook, TikTok, Snap, and YouTube, and their responsibility in the mental health crisis. And we know that students who spend more time on social media have more anxiety, levels of depression, and thoughts of self-harm. So we need to be a strong voice in not necessarily that class action lawsuit. Districts had the opportunity to join that. And I know my district in Oceanside joined that class action lawsuit so that we can potentially obtain monies that will help us support mental health in our schools. Another area is that we can be a leader is in the area of technology. We're seeing this change so quick. 2 things that really come to my mind are virtual reality in the form of headsets and artificial intelligence. You know, a few years ago, we thought that Google Cardboard was all the rage, and now we have the Meta Quest 2, which we can literally put headsets on and be in another place and experience even past events that have happened. I think through our professional development arm, we have administrators that are on the cutting edge of that technology and can lead the way to show us how to embrace these technologies. Same with Chat GPT. Instead of being afraid of it, we need to embrace it. We've all been using predictive text for a while in our text messages and our emails, and we need to show students how to embrace this. And ACSA can do this through professional development. Last but not least, I think facilities are a huge issue for our students, for our staff, for our administrators. And there is legislation right now that we can support that is working on a statewide bond. Not every local district can pass a local bond, so a statewide bond would help us all have access to monies that are critical for our falling facilities. So Naj, I'm trying to stay to my 2-minute timeline, so I think I did it.
There you go. All right. Yeah. Repeat the question for you. What do you see are the key issues in service of students, and how do you think ACSA can be involved in supporting the students?
Well, Naj, thank you again, and thanks, Julie, again, for your involvement with ACSA and wanting to serve the organization in this way. I'll try to be as brief as I can with the 2 minutes also, just trying to be respectful of the guidelines. I would say for me, as a longtime member of ACSA and representing students for almost 30 years in education now, I think given where we were with the pandemic and coming out of the pandemic, that we need to raise awareness and become more focused on student achievement. I really think that for the last few years, we've focused so much on providing technology to students and the social, emotional toll that the pandemic took. I think those are real issues. And prior to the pandemic, we had an issue with results and students that were able to do and know what they're supposed to know. We had an issue prior to the pandemic, and I think we need to return to focusing on the academic outcomes of our students. I don't want us to use the pandemic as an excuse forever for not having students achieve at a high level. And we know that each and every student can achieve at a high level, and it's our job to place them in a position to do so. So we need to eliminate the predictability of who's succeeding and who's not. Number two, which is closely associated with number one, I would say would be the social and emotional needs of students. So we know we need to attend to those needs if they're going to achieve at a high level. So I don't want to minimize the impacts of the pandemic. However, we need to attend to the social emotional needs in such a way that we're still supporting and being laser-like focused on the academic achievement of our students. And then lastly, while the technology will continue to evolve, I think our state has made a pretty substantial commitment to community schools, and we need to work together in partnership to revolutionize our schools and work with our partners to do so. ACSA's role in this will have to take place working together in partnerships. So we'll talk later about our affinity partners and working together with CALSA and CASA and CAPL and the Small Districts Association in order to work the partnership to support our students, and then to take advantage of our human capital to maximize our human capital with such groups like the retirement committee and then the administrators that are less involved. We'll talk about that later though.
All right. Question number two, and Daryl, we'll start with you.
Right.
Let's discuss equity because the pandemic has created new or exacerbated existing equity issues. What are some ways ACSA can be a leader in confronting some of the equity issues that are at the forefront of California public education?
Yeah, so building on a concept that I left the last comment with, Naj, I think it's really important that we look at our human capital. We have administrators that are very much involved in ACSA, and then we have a whole group of administrators that are either not a member of ACSA or have been less involved. And we know that if we're going to do the best for our students, we need to work together in partnership. We need to build on the synergistic nature of people coming together in the same room, same space, focused on academic achievement of our students and supporting our students, all those components that lead to academic achievement. So ACSA is at the forefront. ACSA will be at the forefront. Our perspectives have to be valued, and we're in a prime position to speak on behalf of administrators who support our students. I think some of the items that are really front and center in today is the state's intent to implement ethnic study programs across all high schools, I should say. I think there's a tremendous opportunity that we have to be engaged in that conversation. The models are still being developed, and can we have that conversation in such a way that we're not just talking about secondary students? In other words, ethnic studies, why should you have to wait till secondary education or college in order to get an ethnic study experience? We know our state's highly diverse, and if we have programs and classes for students get more familiar with their identity, who they are, and how they see themselves in the world, then they're going to be stronger students. And you shouldn't have to wait to secondary in order to do that. The other part is I think we need to leverage and utilize these newly accepted virtual formats for sharing of promising practices. So I think our councils and committees have a tremendous opportunity ahead of us, taking advantage of some of our new ways of accepted forms of collaboration.
Thanks, Joe. Julie, let me go ahead and just repeat the question. Let's discuss equity because the pandemic has created new or exacerbated existing equity issues. What are some ways ACSA can be a leader in confronting some of the equity issues that are at the forefront of California public education?
I think the two primary ways is continue to help shape policy and continue to ensure funding follows some of these very successful programs that have put in place. And one of the areas I'll mention is around socioeconomics. With so many of our students living below the poverty line, one of the ways that the governor has attempted to address that is through the Community Schools Initiative. And the Community Schools Initiative, and I know I'm in a district that has been able to take advantage of that grant, and so we have 6 community schools. This helps students with the very basic needs to help them be successful in school, such as eyeglasses and dental care and health care, and helps their families with food insecurity. Some of our schools were putting in actually washers and dryers to help students maintain a clean physical appearance when they're at school. And community schools also create schools as the social hub. And there's millions of dollars flowing into this initiative, but it's time bound. And, we've geared up staff. We have wonderful programs going, and there's no doubt that we're going to see positive outcomes for kids. So ACSA needs to ensure that that money continues to flow for these successful programs. Another area is around curriculum and instruction. Over 10 years ago in California, we passed the FAIR Act, Fair, Accurate, Inclusive, and Respectful. And this is required instruction in all of our K-12 classrooms around the contributions of all people, including women, including people of color, including our lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender population. And I don't believe that this is happening in all of our schools as it's required through education code. And I think that that's one thing. We have our Lead with Pride Summit coming up. We have our equity conference. And that's something that we can continue to educate our leaders about. And also embracing other successful programs like Universal TK, another initiative, a wonderful initiative of the governor. And we need to continue to ensure that those opportunities are funded, and that's how we can impact those opportunities is through our advocacy and through our shaping of policy.
Want to remind our viewers that if you have any questions for our 2 great candidates here, go ahead and put those into our chat. I see Dana Carter, Gary Reller, and Joe Aldaco, 3 of our great members watching our broadcast today. Let me reintroduce you to our 2 ACSA 2023 vice presidential candidates. Julie Vitale, Superintendent, Oceanside Unified School District, that is ACSA Region 18. Daryl Camp, Superintendent, San Lorenzo Unified School District, that is ACSA Region 6. Back to our questions. Julie, I'll have you respond first to this question. Student education leader advocacy, incredibly important, and we've seen examples of that time and time again this year. Let's talk about how we can expand that role and continue to push ACSA as the leader in student advocacy and educator advocacy.
Yeah, I think that ACSA is the leader and the credible voice in public education. And one of the things that I'm most concerned about right now is the very well-funded, well-organized attack on public education. And I think we need to be very proud of what we do in public education. And let's go all in. Let's be the voice. let's support all of the work that is being done, regardless of the political nature that some organizations are talking about public schools. And that's doubling down on our equity focus is one of those ideas. ACSA has been championing equity for decades. And we're getting better and better at it and more clear about what we mean by that. And we need to continue to do that. We need to continue to support all students, no matter how they present themselves in school, because the very nature of public education is embracing all kinds of people, all kinds of kids. And so I think we double down on that equity focus. We double down on our pride in public education and public educators and what we provide to our democracy, and double down on our presence. So are we using all of the channels that are available to us? Are we using all of our members' voices? Are we ensuring that we are empowering our members to not only on Legislative Action Day, but to consistently and constantly be in contact with the political entities that make the decisions and make the rules for our educational system? So let's continue to be that voice and be loud and proud and more proud than ever.
Daryl, let me go ahead and repeat the question for you. Student and education leader advocacy, incredibly important. And we've seen examples of that time and time again this year. Let's talk about how we can expand that role and continue to push ACSA as the leader in student advocacy and educator advocacy.
Yeah, I really appreciate this question. And I really do think that educator and student advocacy, they're cornerstones for our democracy. And I've learned through as serving as a superintendent for 11 years and in very different parts of the state. You know, I'm serving currently in the Bay Area. I also had an opportunity to serve in the Sacramento area. And then I've served in Stanislaus County, which is a relatively rural portion of the state. And what I've learned is that educators and students need to work together in terms of illuminating their educational experience. So what does their experience look like? And it sometimes, even in different parts of the state, people hear information differently depending on the messenger. So sometimes educators are in a great spot in order to advocate on behalf of our students, and educators, especially educational leaders, are in an ideal spot for uplifting or providing a space or a platform for the students that are in our system in order we provide a platform for them to share their experience to people that are in decision-making positions. I'm proud to say that in San Lorenzo, you know, we had one student board member when I first joined the board. When I first joined the governance team as superintendent, and now we have up to 3 student members on our board. And then some other areas in which you know, I've worked to elevate student voice. I had the pleasure of hearing from our students here in San Lorenzo in our November Professional Development Day, where we had a panel discussion with our LGBTQ plus youth and some staff. It was great for our staff to hear from our students about their experiences in our schools. And then most recently to the Bay Area Equity Symposium, I want to thank Region 6 for giving me an opportunity to moderate a fabulous panel discussion at the Equity Symposium, where we heard directly from students about, you know, in different parts of the Bay Area about how we could be more supportive of them as they go through our educational system. So I think it's a winning formula. Yeah, educators and students working on behalf of students to provide a great working and learning environment.
All right, we will move to question 4, but want to make note of it. Gary Reller, one of our great members over in Riverside Unified School District, does have a question for both of our candidates. So we'll tackle that one at the end of question number 4. And Daryl, let me start with you. 5 years from now, where's our organization? And how do you think, from your perspective, position in ACSA state leadership, how can we move us in that direction?
Oh, I really like that question. And the good news is you don't have to hear it from me. I've always believed in working together in partnership to get to understand organizations. So this whole thing about learning and listening and learning to put us in a better position for leading, it's not just a campaign slogan for me. It's what I do. And one of the privileges that I've had over the last few years working with ACSA, I've had a number of different leadership roles in ACSA in multiple regions. but I've had the pleasure recently of serving on that leadership development committee. And that committee has been charged with providing guidance related to the strategic plan. So 5 years from now, we have a strategic plan in place that speaks to that. And some of the one of what I look forward to is being in the room as we continue to develop that strategic plan and to implement that. Some items that I think all ACSA members should look forward to is expanding on our professional learning opportunities to include some type of maybe micro credentials. And once again, this is not me, this is coming from you as ACSA members. Having shorter professional learning opportunities is something that I think our membership's interested in. I think there are opportunities for asynchronous learning as well. One other item that I heard from the members was post-program continuous learning. So after someone goes through one of our academies, what are the ways that you can stay engaged with the people that were a part of that network or have previously been a part of that network? Obviously, stronger partnerships with affinity groups. I've had the pleasure of serving as president for CASA during the pandemic, and I'm a regular attendee at CASA events and Capital events. So those partnerships with affinity groups are something that are going to get a lot stronger over the next 5 years. And I'll just close by saying we're going to be really intentional about our advocacy and influence efforts. That's something that obviously we're going to continue to maximize our membership, because that's our strength, the strength in numbers, the steal from the Warriors, obviously.
And Julie, let me ask you this question. Let me repeat the question. 5 years from now, where's our organization? And how do you think your perspective position in ACSA state leadership can move us in that direction?
Yes, I think that we will continue to lead in the areas of diversity, equity, and inclusion, and championing public education. I also believe that we will be larger. I have a simple idea to double our membership, and it's the Just One campaign. And hashtag Who's Your One, hashtag I Got My One. So if all of us as members just have one other person to join ACSA, we've doubled our membership. And I think that I know that numbers matter in Sacramento. And so it just gives another way to amplify our voices and to make sure that we're heard in Sacramento. And I know our advocacy will continue to make a difference for students. And two things that I'm very concerned about for our administrators is their sustainability in the job and sustainability to do the work that we do as administrators. And what I mean by that is I think we need to pay attention and care about how our employees are doing as far as their mental health and taking on too many responsibilities. As administrators, we're just willing to continue to take on more and more because we see the need and that's what we do. But we have to be concerned about our members and how can we take care of them. And then also sustainability of the actual doing the job and ensuring, and we've been good at this in ACSA. There have been some really good ideas that have gone through the legislature that we just couldn't support because they were unfunded mandates. And we are the warehouse of unfunded mandates. And that's what runs our people into the ground. And it's like, yeah, we can do anything, but we can't do everything. So let's be very specific and very strategic. And that comes through our advocacy work and making sure those mandates that do come down to us, that we have a way to ensure that they're successful.
We do have two questions on our comments section. Let's get to the first one. This is from Gary Reller, as mentioned, Riverside Unified School District. Gary asked the question, and Julie, I'll have you respond first. As a result of student behavior, school student staff safety is a big concern statewide. How can districts make sure our schools are safe through accountability and supports for students and families?
Yeah, thank you for the question, Gary, and appreciate that very much. And we're all very concerned about student safety. And there's so many ways that we can address this question, right? So first and foremost, I talked about mental health for our students and being very proactive in addressing their needs. And I think this needs to be addressed K-12. So are we providing the resources to ensure that we can put counselors in our schools? And not just part-time counselors, full-time. We've been able to do that in Oceanside because the Board of Education here has prioritized mental health. And beyond that, are we looking at social workers and social work interns that we can leverage out our system to be able to meet the needs of more students? Are we looking at partnerships with mental health agencies if we have access to those? For our rural areas that might not have access, can we look at telehealth and other options? There are so many options to be able to reach students. So I think mental health first and foremost, those early warning systems, our staff being able to identify when students are at risk of self-harm or harm to others. So those are some of the proactive things. I think also looking at, and we're doing this right now in our district, but I'm thinking statewide and what we can all do. And I've heard a lot of ideas about people taking a look at their campuses and how can we look at those to make them even more safe. I don't like to talk about hardening schools, but it is a fact that we have to consider. So again, what funding mechanisms are available through facilities bonds that we can put in infrastructure to help secure those parts of our campus that might not be so safe. So I think two areas, that very proactive mental health approach, and I think that facilities approach. And again, ACSA advocacy is the key to ensure that those funding mechanisms continue.
Daryl, let me repeat the question from Gary Reller. As a result of student behavior, school, student, staff safety is a big concern statewide. How can districts make sure our schools are safe through accountability and supports for students and families?
Well, I think in large part the answer is in the question, because it points back to our districts. All of our situations are so different. Like I said, I had the pleasure of serving for 7 years as a superintendent in Stanislaus County, and now I'm in the Bay Area. And the commonality with those two communities is that there's an interest in supporting students. Once again, there are different approaches that are thought about in different communities. We used to have a formula in education, if students misbehave or didn't do what we like them to do, we would send them home, the families would fix them and send them back, right? I think we've learned now that that's not the approach. That's not the approach that's going to be most advantageous to so many students. We need to, like Julie mentioned, advocate for having more resources in our schools. And I think the community schools model is a great structure to do that. The more resources we have in the schools, the more we can conduct a root cause analysis to see what's happening among the students in our school. Of course, if there are larger community issues that we're sort of in the middle of larger communities, I think that's working together in even greater partnership with all of the agencies that are paid as public services in order to support communities. So I really think it's up to us to work together in partnership with other agencies that are connected to our school systems and to advocate for greater resources. The last thing I'm going to say is that when we think about this, I know we're thinking broader than just physical safety. We have to think about psychological safety too. Our students, and many students have been in traumatic situations in schools that we created. So how can we learn from each other to enhance our knowledge, our skills, so we can create safer environments for our students? And once again, I think that's going to be work together in partnership. So many great leaders around the state, and we need to activate that leadership in such a way that's going to enhance our learning environments.
Let me ask this final question here from Dana Carter. Dana says, California is a state of diversity. How do you approach balancing and elevating voices that are not being heard while addressing those in our communities who believe their voice is being taken away? Daryl, I'll have you start.
Yeah, thank you, Naj, for having me start. And thanks, Dana, for the question. I feel like I've seen Dana in so many venues. We've been zooming around to different council and committee meetings throughout the last few months. And I think that's it. By being a presence and by listening and looking for opportunities to elevate the voices of those that aren't traditionally heard. I think that's the key. I mentioned the event that we did in the fall, just trying to understand the experiences of some of our students in our schools. I think we can continuously do that, not only in our school districts, but we can do that kind of statewide too. Sometimes we realize when we're elevating, an example, when we're elevating student voice, sometimes it's hard for students in our systems to share with the adults that are currently serving them. So we can actually form panels of students or teachers or administrators using this great virtual format in such a way that will, once again, allow them to share and allow us to better understand the learning or the service areas for either students or the people that serve them. So I think it's our job to look for opportunities, continuous opportunity to elevate those voices that are or that sometimes are not heard. And that's one thing I've learned from serving in multiple parts of the state. Once again.
Julie, let me repeat the question from Dana Carter. Dana says, California is a state of diversity. How do you approach balancing and elevating voices that are not being heard while addressing those in our communities who believe their voice is being taken away?
Yeah, Dana, thank you for the question. This is super relevant, and it really goes from the boardroom to the classroom. And it's really our democratic process, right, to ensure that we're listening to all voices. And so I'll talk about some of the ways that that could be done locally, and I'll give you a really recent example of how that's being done within ACSA. So I think very locally, board meetings are one thing, but I won't go down, I'm not going to go down that road, but that's certainly an avenue for people to share their opinions and their thoughts about what's happening in a district. As far as a structure in a school district, one strategy that we've invoked is through listening circles. And we've had very specific listening circles, and we've done them both virtually and in person, and with different kinds of groups. In Oceanside, we are a military serving school district. So we have about 2,000 students on Camp Pendleton. So we've put together a listening circle just for our military connected families, because their needs are very different than the needs of some of our other students. And we put them together for various groups, our parents of LGBT students, and or if their family structure is LGBT. What are their specific needs and how can we respond? We've done the same thing for people of color. So that's one way that I think you can give voice to people that are traditionally marginalized and don't have a voice. And one way that ACSA has done that just recently, through a conversation that some of us were involved in with the executive director, is right now the LGBT community is being attacked at all levels at the national level in a very strategic way. And we're very concerned about how our members are responding or how our members in the community are feeling. And just today, a thought exchange was released to get some thoughts and ideas from our members about what ACSA can do to ensure that they feel supported and know that they have resources to access within their job. I think that was such a responsive way for ACSA to get involved in that conversation and support members. And I think that I know this is something we will continue to do as an organization.
And folks, we've just crossed the bottom of the hour, so let's go ahead and get to closing statements. We'll give both of our candidates 2 minutes for their closing statements. Julie, we'll have you go first.
Thank you, Naj. And I think you need to be impressed with both of our ability to stay within the 2 minutes.
Very much so, yes.
Daryl. So thank you. In closing, I'd like to say that I'm a candidate who has served in small, medium, and large districts. I've been in rural, urban, suburban, coastal, and military serving districts, and have a great love and affinity for California and the work that we do here in service of our 6 million students. I've run on the platform that I'm the A+ candidate, and here's why. I want to amplify your voice. So speaking to that question that we just received, that's what I'm most interested in, is how can we amplify the voice of our ACSA members? I was very fortunate to find my voice maybe about a decade ago, but I've been a member over 25 years. I would like people to find their voice sooner so that they can figure out what's that thing that they care about and how can ACSA respond and live out that mission that they might have individually that could become a bigger mission for ACSA. I want to affirm safe and inclusive schools. I believe this is critical to my core. And, the number one reason is I feel that a basic human need is to belong. to just belong, right? To whether that's a family, an organization, a peer group. That sense of belonging, I think, is critical to ensuring that human beings thrive. And that's why I believe so strongly in affirming safe and inclusive schools so that all kids feel that they are safe in their school. And lastly, to continue to accentuate the advocacy within ACSA. We are so good at this and we are so strong in the advocacy world. I want us to continue to that. So that's why I believe I'm the A+ candidate to amplify your voice, to affirm safe and inclusive schools, and to accentuate ACSA advocacy.
And Daryl, your closing statements.
All right. Well, thank you, Julie. And A+. It's been a long time since I've seen an A+ on a report card from me. But I will say this. You know, I love ACSA. I get fired up. I was texting some people this morning. I said I get fired up when I get involved in ACSA events and activities. It's kind of like the retirement committee said, you know, staying alive, right? Keeping the spirit alive. Well, my spirit is alive every time I get involved in ACSA type activities. And for me, it has always been and it will always be about listening and learning. I'm a better leader because of you. I'm a better leader. I became more active in ACSA around 2005 after being an administrator for about 7 years. And as I've become more involved in ACSA, I've become a better leader. I've just developed different partnerships. The networks have grown. I've learned with and from you. I've had some great opportunities to serve, like I said, as president of the Association of African American Superintendents and Administrators. I've had some fabulous experiences in learning with CALSA and CAPL. It's just been a fascinating journey. I've loved the consultancy that I do with CSBA. I get to travel around the state and work with governing boards. And what it's done for me is I've learned much more than I would have about the diversity that exists within California. And not just racial and ethnic diversity, but like Julie mentioned, small districts, big districts, rural communities, urban communities, suburban communities. I've learned so much and I've listened so much. And because of that, I'm in a better position to lead. And I want to continue that leadership as ACSA's vice president and then, of course, the president. So I get fired up. I can just get fired up. And I'm so happy that we have great people that that want to step into these leadership roles. So thank you again to ACSA for providing this forum. Thanks to Julie for running for this position. And I hope to, you know, obviously I hope that you will select me to serve in this position, but I'm going to stay fired up.
All right, let me thank both of our candidates for ACSA Vice President, Julie Vitale, Superintendent, Oceanside Unified School District, ACSA Region 18, and Daryl Camp, Superintendent, San Lorenzo Unified School District, ACSA Region 6. Julie and Daryl, thank you so much for being part of this candidate forum and for your commitment to our organization and to education leaders and students. Your student advocacy, paramount to everything we do here in California public education. Julie and Daryl, thanks so much for being with us today. Folks, want to remind you that our Leadership Assembly will be voting in mid-May for the next candidate for the office of Vice President. One of these two great candidates, Julie or Daryl, will be elected and ultimately become the 56th president here for the Association of California School Administrators. Also want to remind you Thursday, coming up this Thursday, 10 a.m., we will have our candidate forum for Vice President for Legislative Action. Again, that is a live and interactive event. We hope you join us Thursday, 10 a.m. for our VPLA candidate forum. Thank you so much for being with us today. I'm Naj Ali Khan, ACSA Senior Director of Marketing and Communications. Have a great rest of the day and rest of the week, and we'll see you Thursday morning.